Meet Anisa Wilson Smith. Anisa is the founder and CEO of Life Skills Publishing and Consultancy Services and Life Skills Education Academy. She's an author, a guidance counselor, a lecturer, and she formerly held posts such as Senior Programs Development Specialist, Senior Youth Empowerment Officer, and Youth Empowerment Officer in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, Jamaica. She's the holder of a Master's of Science degree in Education from Florida International University, a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Guidance and Counseling from the International University of the Caribbean, and a Teacher's Diploma in Guidance and Counseling from Sharpe Teachers College. She also studied youth development in Israel and represented Jamaica in 2007 at the Commonwealth Youth Conference in East Africa, Uganda. She has received many awards for youth and community development. She was recently nominated for the Governor General's Awards of Excellence. Her mandate is personal growth for everyone, especially children and youth. Today, Anisa Wilson Smith joins us on Defying the Odds, where she talks about her journey to where she's at today. Hi, Anisa.
Hi, it's indeed a pleasure to join you, Latoya. It's really great. It's been a long time.
A very long time. It's great to catch up with you again. And you see all those important things that I read about you. I want the whole world to know that you were my college batchmate. So I know of the important people, them.
I know we had awesome time together, Latoya. Awesome memories.
Yes,
you know, you're an excellent friend, a confidant. Oh my God, you are there all the way. So it's such a pleasure.
Yes. Yes, it's so good to hear all the things that you're doing. So today we want to walk people through that journey to where you're at today. So proud of you. We want to start to talk about your childhood years, where you grew up. What was your childhood years like? So walk us through your journey, Anisa.
So I'm from the Garden Parish. So I'm from St. Anne, and I grew up in a little community known as Middle Street Exchange. I went to Exchange Basic School, then I went to Exchange All Age School. So I basically attended school in my community. I remember walking to school. Yes, so I would walk to school, walk back home. It was about 15 minutes. And I remember going home for lunch. At that time, it was the norm for children to go home for lunch, you know, because the community, the socioeconomic status, is a poor community. Mm-hmm. And so that was expected. But I had a pretty normal childhood. I loved education from a very young age. You know, when I think back on my early childhood experience, it was pretty normal. I remember playing, you know, we played outdoors. It's so different from what our children are experiencing today. You know, sometimes I feel it for them. You know, they're so much into the technology, but for me, growing up, it was outdoors. So we'd play all the outdoor games. So my childhood was pretty normal. You know, it was pretty normal growing up.
Okay, and you would say you were from a poor background, but poor more mentally than anything else.
So I'll tell you about that. So when I look back, I believe that it was not poor materially because my family, they had land, right? They owned a lot of land in Middlesex, still do. However, they were poor mentally. And because they were poor mentally, Latoya, it meant that they also were poor resourcefully, you know, in terms of providing for us as children, because they didn't see the value, they didn't have the education, the knowledge as to how they could convert the assets, the resources that they had to improve their standard of living, to improve our standard of living. And so I believe that poverty is a mental state, you know, because I'm looking at now how much I can do, but they're just not there mentally. And so because of that, you know, I grew up in that poor environment in terms of the material things that I needed because of the lack of knowledge of my family.
Wow. So you went to primary school, or was it all age school? And you never had much stimulation and didn't have the books and so forth. So those years were pretty rocky. What did you talk about that time?
They were. I can remember because I didn't have the stimulation, didn't have the books, didn't have the interest. You know, my parents' education was of little value, not because they didn't want it to be of value, but just because they were so focused on feeding us. Their focus was on providing our basic needs. And so even though I had the natural ability to do well, because I didn't have the support, because I didn't have the stimulation, I felt frustrated. I remember when I was in about grade 3 or grade 4 thereabouts, I felt totally lost. So I consider myself a slow boomer. You know, I blossomed slowly. It wasn't until high school that my true potential came out, you know, with much more support, attention, etc. But I felt totally lost. And so I did not pass at that time it was common entrance. I did not pass the common entrance exams. I went to grade 7 because it was an all-age school. So I moved on to grade 7. And then it was a neighbor who told my mom that she should try and get me into Orokobesa High School. And it was that neighbor that took me to the school. I did the test, and then I got a place at Orokobesa High School. That's how I got in high school. You know, if it hadn't been for that neighbor, perhaps I would just leave all age and that's it. You know? So it goes to show, it's so sad, Latoya. This has so much implications for our children. Sometimes they have the ability, they have the natural ability, but because they don't have the stimulation, because they don't have the person showing the interest, they get left behind. This is their future. A person's entire future can just end like that, you know? So I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for that neighbor. I'm so grateful for the opportunity that I had to go to high school.
Yes, and you went to high school and you did very well at high school. That was where you started to bloom and you did excellent. Tell us about those high school years.
So my high school years was amazing. I remember in grade 7, that was the only time that I came second. You see, after grade 8 it was first, grade 9 it was first, grade 10, grade 11, I left with 9 CXC subjects. I did very well. I was head girl there, very disciplined, you know, Christian. I was almost the perfect child in high school. I'm telling you, you know, really outstanding. So my high school was very, very favorable. I had the support of my church. I had the support of persons in the community, because you know when you're in a community, a poor community, Latoya, and persons hear that you're bright, that's the term they use, then they will help. I remember even when it was time to pay my CXCs and to get the CXC books, etc., it was family members that chip in, like auntie, uncle, everybody put money together because this was a bright girl. She had looked like she had a future. And so everybody chipped in and helped me to go through high school, you know. So it shows the lesson. It shows that the community can really raise a child when we have the right community, when we have the right people in the community looking out for our children. So I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for that opportunity.
So high school, you actually got 9 CXC subjects and you were a girl at high school. They did very, very well. But after high school, because you're from a poor household, you could not afford to go into college right away. So you had to get a job. And that would have
indeed
some money to go into college. Let's talk about those years when you left high school and how you transitioned into your college years.
So after high school, I had to work a year to accumulate some money, and I did a little partner. Partner is basically where you join with other persons. We know a partner in Jamaica, so I could get the first school fee for college, right? So that I just needed the start to go into college, right? And I had persons looking out for me, community persons, etc., to help me to make the transition in terms of the application process, because this is something very new. And I must say that I was the first person in my family to have a tertiary level education. So I was able to go into college and to continue working part-time. I worked on campus as well, used to do some teaching. We had various programs on campus to help financially, right? So I was also able to go through the 3 years at Sharpe Teachers College with that type of community approach, that type of help, that support. And this shows that in our journey, in our success journey, Latoya, we cannot do it alone. We cannot do it alone. You have to have persons looking out for you. You have to have that support system. You just cannot do it alone. And so the message in this is, that no man is an island. No man stands alone. Teamwork is important. We have to help each other. We have to lift each other. And so in college, I continued on the trend in terms of academically, continued to do very well. I remember getting awards every single year. Awards in guidance and counseling every year. I got awards in research. I got awards in education. I got awards in teaching practice. I maintained that academic excellence, right? Because I value education. And so I did well in college. However, the final year now, this is where I strayed a bit. And I remember I told you I grew up in a Christian environment. I was a Christian. I got baptized from grade 9 from high school.
Right.
In the final year of college now, I got pregnant. And this was a really big disappointment over my life. It was a big disappointment for the community. Remember, everybody have me on this pedestal. So that was a big blow for me. However, thank God it occurred in the final year when I was finished with all my courses. Only thing I had left to do was teaching practice. And so I still was able to get my diploma in guidance and counseling. And, I was able to finish. So it didn't affect my studies, thank God. The baby was born October 2003. And I was able to get a job by January 2004 at my old high school. So after finishing, I got a teaching job at Orocobesa High School in 2004. And so thank God, you know, with family support, again, this is so important. With family, my family was there, you know, during that difficult period. They supported me all the way, right? And in 2004 now, I went to Urkabesa High, started teaching. I taught there for approximately a year and some months, approximately 2 years. And then I left to the ministry. And a lot of persons they couldn't understand how I would have left a job that I was going to be permanent in. So when I left, I just got my letter of permanency that I'm getting, you know, I'm going to be a permanent staff. However, the opportunity came up to serve in the youth division in the Ministry of Education. Even though it was a temporary post, I decided to take that risk. I think that's a part of my personality. I'm a risk taker. So I decided to take the risk to join the Ministry of Education in the youth division. And I'm telling you, I do not regret that decision that I took, because it opened up so many opportunities, the growth, the training and development. I don't regret taking that risk to take up a temporary post over that permanent post in the high school.
Great. So you would have gone into the youth division of the Ministry of Education, youth division, as a youth empowerment officer. And you would have worked over the years until you became senior youth empowerment officer and up to senior programs development officer. In fact, when you transitioned from the youth division, you would have left that post. Let's talk about your work in the youth division. What was that like? You were working with unattached youth. You had some opportunities while being there to travel abroad. Let's talk about that journey.
So the youth division, very dynamic division, where we focus our key audience, target audience, would be unattached youth. These are young people who are not in school, they're not in employment, they're just there. And our job as youth empowerment officer was to get them attached, to get them back in school, to get them in a club, to get them a part of society, because it's like they weren't in the society. We wanted to get them back into the safety net. And so we would have to create a number of programs. We had to partner with different organizations, Harchus, NTA, JFLL, etc. We had to collaborate to get these young people in. And so I did outstanding in my work as youth empowerment officer. You know, I have a number of initiatives. The other day I went on the Gleaner, just researching my name, and I saw some of the articles came up as to some of the initiatives that I would have implemented in the youth division to ensure that we capture our unattached youth. So I did very well, and then some positions were created. Four positions were created for the entire island. 4 senior youth empowerment officers, and I was fortunate to be one of those, right? So this was revolutionary. It never happened before. There were no posts called senior youth empowerment officer. And so as a senior youth empowerment officer now, my role, job function, was to manage other youth empowerment officers. So I managed the youth empowerment officers in St. Anne and in Trelawney. So I was responsible for, you know, helping them to create work plans, evaluations, training and development, you name it. Then, you know, after my work as senior youth empowerment officer, again, I continued to be innovative, to be creative. It was during that time that I wrote a program for the ministry known as the Safety and Security Ambassadors Program. Now, this was revolutionary. It was well needed. It was adopted by the ministry. We had the launch. We started the piloting and everything. the pandemic is what kind of threw cold water on it, you know. So when things turn around, I'll definitely be assisting in helping them to revamp that program. But I wrote that program during my time as Senior Youth Empowerment Officer. Then a position came up now for Senior Programs Development Specialist. And this was the last post that I held, Senior Programs Development Specialist, where now I'll be responsible for not only writing programs, but monitoring a program's departments, you know. So the management role, writing of programs, etc. And I think this is due to my background. I did my master's in curriculum development with the Florida International University. So after finishing Sharpe, then I went to IUC, International University of the Caribbean. Then I went to FIU to do curriculum development. And so that really cemented my knowledge in writing programs, writing proposals, writing courses, curriculum, you name it, right? So it was really an exciting journey for me at the ministry, but there was a but.
Yes, and you were able to travel, to do some international travels as well, right? While at the youth division, you were able to
certainly,
and you went to Africa. We want to hear about those. What were those about, and how were those trips for you as a Jamaican?
So in just 3 years after joining the youth division, in 2007, I was selected as one of the candidates to go to Africa. So I went to Entebbe, Uganda, that's East Africa, and I basically represented Jamaica, one of the representatives in the Commonwealth Youth Program. So every 4 years, you have young persons converging in different countries around the world to give insights into some of the youth issues that young people are facing globally, especially in the Commonwealth. Then they would give, you know, ideas, recommendations, etc., to the different governments of the Commonwealth nation. So, you know, when I went there, I served as a rapporteur for the group. My focus was on sex and sexuality education, you know, and making those recommendations. So it was indeed an amazing opportunity to be in Africa, to serve, to the welcome there. It was an amazing experience. We were treated like royalties, you know, so we had we had our special vehicles. We had, you know, the royalty treatment. I'm telling you, the security set up when we were traveling, the convoys, it was really amazing, that experience in Africa. And then now in 2012, the opportunity came up to study in Israel. The focus of the study was an entire month in Israel. The focus of the study was preventing students dropouts. So it was about youth at risk, but in the high school, right? So I got the opportunity to study their education system from early childhood right up. And some key principles that are still with me. For example, I never forget, when I went there, I'm so used to, in Jamaica, when we're having anything, we start with the launch, and we launch everything. When I went to Israel, and I was wondering, how they're not launching anything? You know what they said to me? They said, no, we do the launch after the work is done. And I'm telling you, that's exactly what they did. After we went through and we did what we had to do, that was when they celebrated at the end of the program. Another key learning that I remember from Israel, they said, listen, you see, our early childhood education, it is the foundation. Our early childhood education determines the quality of our universities. I never forget that. Wow. So their budget, Lataya, the best quality teachers, the master's teachers, the doctoral, the best goes to the early childhood level. And that
Wow.
stuck with me. It stuck with me. The quality of our early childhood education determines the quality of our universities. Profound.
Yeah.
Profound. So some key principles, and when I look at how all the programs, etc., that they put in place to prevent at risk, prevent student dropout. So for us, when we look at our at risk, we are doing programs for persons up to 30, 24, up to 29, right? For them, because they focus so much on prevention, they don't pass 18. So they put in all the work very early so that they don't have the mess to be cleaning up. You understand? So the learning, the lessons from Israel, profound. And I still have my connection. We're still in our WhatsApp group. We're still on our Facebook group. So we connect. We have persons all over the world, educators all over the world that we still connect. We talk on a day-to-day basis, just the same, because we're all in development. So those were amazing opportunities from the Ministry of Education, from the Youth Division, and I'm so grateful. And so that is why I have so much now to give back and to share.
Right, and that is very powerful what you said, because in countries where they see early childhood as, you know, it's persons who they don't have much qualifications and so forth, work at the early childhood level, we don't understand how problematic that is, because that is where everything starts. The personality is shaped between age 0 to 5 years old, and that is when you have most brain development as well. And so if you do not have qualified persons who are able to tap into the art and the science of early childhood development, then you end up having the at-risk youth at age 30, as you described. Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's really,
thank you very much. So saying prevention is better than cure, it is true. It is true. It is true. It is so sad that you know, in our society, it's kind of, we're not very proactive. So we're very reactive. So we keep trying to fix the problem when we see it develop. When it's not fixed, we need to be preventing it. For us here in Jamaica, having so many social issues, I believe that a part of the key solution is to ensure that we get it right at the early childhood level of the education system. And I believe that if we get it right, not just for the education system, but for parenting, that our parents are knowledgeable, that they have the skills, the values, the attitude, then the social ills, the social issues would be significantly lowered. That is my belief based on what I saw in Israel.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Anisa, for joining us today. And I agree 100% with you, because having worked in the early childhood sector for a number of years, I am always lobbying for better training, more training of early childhood practitioners. And mark you, I now work with the Early Childhood Commission, and we do a lot of training with practitioners. But when I talk about training, I mean that practitioners take the responsibility to get themselves qualified in the area so that they have the know-how in order to better facilitate these children. So I'm an advocate for that, because I believe that this is really where it starts. We want to thank you today, Anisa, for joining us on Defying the Odds. It's part one of your story. When we speak again, we will look at part 2, because you are now an independent consultant, education consultant. You have written a number of books. You are the founder of Life Skills Publishing and Consultancy Services, and you also are the founder of an academy. So we want to look at that journey. how COVID-19 affected it, because you stepped out right before COVID-19 would have affected us here in Jamaica. And you have had really, you have had to navigate those, what you would call troublesome waters, and standing confidently today that your business is going to take off and it's going in the right direction. We want to show people the books that you have written. We want to show people the services that you provide, so they know where to find Life Skills Publishing. Thank you again for talking to us today on Defying the Odds. Until then.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and keep up the excellent work, Latoya, woman of excellence. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.